it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 4 of my 2023 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Little Snow Globe Dog, Joy to All, and Furry and Bright. And I'm going to be creating a reveal wheel interactive card today. So the first thing I did was to die cut the wheel out of some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock. And then I'm taking one of the reveal wheel templates for the Little Snow Globe Dog. There's either 3 or 4 little sections, depending which template you use. I'm using the 4 section template today. So I line that up with the wheel and tape that into place with a little bit of post-it tape. And then I can pop that in my MISTI, line up my image carefully, and then I'm going to ink that up with some Lawn Fawn jet black ink and stamp that down. And I always prefer to stamp down twice, which is why I'm using my MISTI so that I can do that to get the nice bold lines that I like. I'm just going to continue then swapping out the image as I turn that until each of those 4 windows are full, and that's what's going to make up the interactive part of my card. So there's a bunch of different options for the inserts. I decided to go with the snowman, the house, the reindeer, and the Christmas tree. So that way it went with like a critter or figure and then 2 scenery elements. And I just made sure that they were kind of opposite and interspaced between each other. So once I'm done with that, I can peel off the tape and lift off the template, and there we have our little wheel. So the rest of the images I've also stamped out with the same ink on Spectrum Noir paper, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers, starting with my little dogs, and I wanted them to be just pale brown. I had like a specific color palette in mind of like red, green, white, a little touch of gold, and beige, basically, beige and brown. So I decided to do the dogs with E50, E51, and E53. So when I color critters, I always like to put the shadows down the back of their body and keep their face nice and highlighted so you can make out all of their adorable features. So for the first little dog, I shaded him on the left. And then for this little dog, he's a little bit different because his body is facing toward the left, so his shadows will fall on the right, but his head is facing toward the right, so the shadows on his head fall on the left. So I just kind of turned, the shading in the direction that each body part was kind of facing. But anyway, I blended out the E53 with the E51 and then used the E50 for the highlight. And I also left some white space on their muzzles and their bellies. And then I'm going to color in the little dog bone with just the E51 and E50. And I also left a little bit of white space on that. Then moving over to the reveal wheel, I'm going to color in the deer's face with the E53 and the E51, and I also used the E51 for his antlers, and then I'll use the E51 and the E50 for the antlers on the little reindeer hat that one of the dogs is going to be wearing. Then I'm going to switch up my browns to some slightly darker shades, still sticking with the E50s, but this time I'm using E55, E57, and E59. And I'm going to color in my dog's ears just to give them a bit of extra contrast. So I put the E59 at the top and then blended down with the E57 and then use the E55 for the tips that are kind of flared up a little bit. And then I'm going to move on to a completely different brown combo. This time I'm switching to the E30s because I wanted to make it clear that the hat is not, part of the body. So I just wanted it to be a different brown. So E33, E35, and E37 is what I'm going to use for that. I'm also going to use that for my gingerbread. I really love this combo for gingerbread. I think it looks really nice and, realistic. So I went ahead and colored him in carefully around his little buttons, and then I'll move back over to my reveal wheel and do the deer's body. And for him, because he's facing completely forward, I'm putting the shading on the outside of his body and the highlight in the center of his belly and his forehead. Then I will turn my reveal wheel and color in the trunk of my tree with the E37, and I will do the roof of my house and the chimney with all 3 shades. Well, the chimney was just the E37, but the roof I did all 3 shades on. For my greens, I decided to go with some desaturated blue greens. Well, they're in the blue-green family. They don't look that blue-toned, but they are more cool-toned. So I'm using BG90, BG93, BG96, and BG99 for my little console here, the little table. And I wanted to do a 2-toned effect and have the drawers be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to skip over those for right now. And I just did the shading with the BG99, and then I added in a little bit of the BG96, which ended up being nearly the same color, so I didn't even end up putting it underneath the drawers. I just went ahead and skipped over that part. Then I'm going to blend that out with the BG93 for the outer portion, just carefully catching the edge of the previous shades so that I get a nice smooth blend and don't leave behind any harsh lines. And then once I have that all filled in, I'm going to start on the drawers with the BG93 for the darkest, and I'll bring that in from either side. And then I'm going to blend that out with the BG90. So only the 2 shades on the drawers, but I really like how this turned out. I think it added just a little subtle contrast with the lighter tone there. And yeah, I decided not to color the top part of the table. I'm going to do that a little bit differently in just a bit. But for now, I am going to color in some of my Christmas lights green. So I just started with the first one and then skipped 2 and then did the next one and skipped 2 and then did the next one, because I'm going to have a 3 color combo on that string of lights. I also wanted to do a green house, so I started with that BG96 up under the roof line and then blended down with the BG93. I just used the 2 shades on that since it was such a small space. And then I'm going to do my Christmas tree, and again I started with the BG96. This time I did squeeze in all 3 of the lightest shades just to have an extra bit of contrast there. So for that tabletop, I'm going to use T0 and T1 to maybe look like the edge of a marble tabletop. I used a little T1 on the outside and then blended out with the T0 and then left it white in the center. And then for the gold accents, I'm using YR20, YR21, and YR23. I'm going to do the drawer pulls, and then also the little plaque on the snow globe. And for all of those, I put the darkest on the outside edges and then blended toward the center for the highlight. I also used the YR23 for the carrot nose on the snowman and one of the buttons on my gingerbread man. And then I'm going to move on to a red combo. I'm using R24, R29, and R39. I'm going to do the base of the snow globe, and again, because it's just facing completely forward, I'm putting the darkest on the outside edges and the highlight in the center, trying to keep that consistent across all those furniture pieces. And I'm going to do the dog bowl the same, with the exception of the inside. Because that gingerbread man is sitting in the center, I wanted to have a little bit of shading around him. And I figured like the edges would be catching the most light. So the edges are going to be the lightest on the inside, but then the center would be the part that's catching the most light on the base. So I put the highlight there for that part. And then I'm also going to do the little bow on my dog bone, and also the string of lights. I'm going to do some more of those. And I did the lights that are immediately following the green. So that leaves 2 left for my last combo in just a bit. And I really love how that R24 in this combo just really adds a lot of warmth to that. And I'm also going to add a red door to my house. And I did squeeze all 3 shades onto that as well. Then I'm moving on to E40, E41, and E42 for those lights. So I could have used the T shades, but I wanted them to be a little bit of a warm light. So that's why I went with those. And then I also decided to use these for my snow, which typically I go with like a pale blue-green, but I didn't want to introduce blue into this scene really. I wanted to stick with the color palette that I had chosen, so I decided to get a little creative and use these kind of creamy tones for all of the snow, including the snow that is on the ground beneath each of the images. So I'm just going around with that E42 and I'm kind of connecting the lines in between where they end. And then I'm going to blend that out with the E41 and then add a little bit of E40 in there and then just let that fade into white because I don't want it to look like dirty snow. I just wanted it to be a soft cream color. And this will dry back a little bit as well, so it won't be quite as dark in the end. And then I did also add just a little bit of color to the inner edge of that snow globe, just so there would be a little something on the inner part of the die cut. And then for the sky, because I didn't want to bring in blue, I decided to go with BG70 and BG72 because they are very like grayed out blues, and that's going to be my sky. So I'm adding a little bit of that BG72 just at the edge of the snow where the sky begins, and then a little bit around my images down toward the bottom. And then I'll blend out with the BG70, which is a super pale shade. I often use this for like fairy wings or glass, things like that, because it's just a barely there shade, again, once it dries back especially. The one thing is that it is a bit hard to blend out the BG72 with. I wish there were a marker in between these shades, but there isn't. So in order to remove that harsh line, I am going to have to do a little bit of tip-to-tip action there and just pick up a little bit of that BG72 with the BG70 and then continue to blend that out to just smooth that out a bit. And I'm glad that I went with this shade rather than like a brighter, more saturated blue, because I think it just fit more with the color palette that I had already had going on. This very traditional, warm and cozy Christmas palette. So I'm just going to finish blending out the edges of those last few little lines there to smooth them out a bit. And then once I am done with that, all that's left is to give these critters some rosy cheeks. So I'm using R00 and R20 for that, a little R20 first, and then blending out with the R00. And I did add it to the snowman and the reindeer on the reveal wheel as well, even though it was super tiny. And then I trimmed the images out with their matching dies. So I'm going to be creating an indoor scene for today's card. So I'm going to go to my favorite flannel 6x6 pad and choose a print to be my wallpaper. I'm going with this creamy diagonal plaid. And then I'm going to take the reveal wheel die and also the reveal wheel little snow globe dog add-on, the little mechanism part. I'm going to pop that in where I have some post-it tape there, and then I will run that through my die cutting machine. Then I'm ready to assemble the interactive mechanism. So I'm going to take that small little circle that also comes with the reveal wheel die set. I'm going to put a brad through that and then pop it up through the back of my wheel so that when you open that brad, it opens to the front where your images are. Then I'll flip that over and add 3 little foam dots around the brad so they will be supporting it without touching it. That's very important. Then I can peel off the release papers so that that will be ready to adhere. Then I'll take the pattern paper that I die cut the window from and line that up with the first image. Hold that in place while I grab the second part, which I just die cut out of white cardstock without the window. And then I'll line up the edges of those panels and press that foam tape down and test the mechanism to make sure that it is working. Then I can remove the pattern paper, and I'm going to add a whole bunch of foam dots to this background piece. That's going to allow that mechanism room to move. You want to make sure that your foam dots do not touch anywhere near that mechanism, because if they do, your wheel isn't going to turn. So I'm using the larger foam dots on the outside edges where I have plenty of room and don't need to worry about getting close to that wheel. And then once I am a little bit nervous about, kind of impeding on that space, I will switch to the smaller foam dots. And I am using a lot of them. I just want my card to be really well supported. I am somebody that does like to use a lot of foam dots anyway, or foam strips. Typically I use foam strips. I only use the foam dots for interactive cards like this, where you want to be really careful about the amount, and it would be a little bit trickier to trim it all down to the different sizes that you might need. So the foam dots are nice and easy for things like this. So once I have that all well supported how I want it, I'm going to take off all of those release papers, and I'm just tossing them in my Twiddler's Nook embellishment tray for now, and then I can carry that whole thing over to the garbage can when I'm done, so it just makes it nice and easy. And if you're not sure if any of your foam dots are a little bit close to your wheel, you can just spin it and double check that it is still going smoothly and it's not getting hung up on anything. So once I have all those release papers moved off, I'm going to test it one more time, and then I will grab the top piece, that pattern paper, line the corners back up with each other, and then press that down into place. And you can see that that is just working beautifully. So I'm going to set that aside for now and work on my sentiment. I'm taking this Merry Xmas sentiment from the Positive Christmas stamp set, and I have never used it, so I did just clean it off with my stamp chamois quickly to remove any residue from the manufacturer, and then I'm inking that up with my Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink and stamping that down, and I will stamp that down twice again, as I always do, to make sure I have a nice bold impression, or at least I always do with black anyway. And then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using Lawn Fawn Speckled Eggshell cardstock, and I'm going to stamp on the inside in Sage Leaf ink. I just thought that was the green that matched the closest to the Copic coloring that I have already done. So the image is from Furry and Bright and the snowflakes as well, and then the rest of the sentiment, Hope It's Positively Great, is from that Positive Christmas stamp set that I used on the outside. I did just move one of the snowflakes over so that I could have 3. I just thought that was more pleasing to the eye. And then I am going to take my mechanism and line the back with some foam tape. So again, you could use the foam squares since I already had them out. That would have been easy to do, but I think it's a lot quicker to use the foam tape. I prefer the foam tape when I'm not having to worry about things getting in the way. So on the back, it was totally fine to use this. And then I'm going to peel off those release papers. And the reason for popping it up again is to keep that mechanism able to be turned easily. You want to be able to get your finger in there to rotate that wheel as easily as possible. So there you can see it's just moving right along. So I'm going to take some light brown wood grain cardstock that I also die cut with that reveal wheel die so that it would line up perfectly and continue that stitching detail. And then I'm going to add a little white strip of cardstock to be the baseboard in my scene. I didn't add quite enough glue on there, so I'm going to have to just add a little bit more. It wasn't quite sticking, grabbing to that pattern paper. So I'll just line that back up again and make sure it's on there nice and straight. Give that glue a couple seconds to adhere. Then I'm going to take that snow globe that I die cut the center out of and just put that right around the opening for the reveal wheel. Just make sure that's on there straight as well. Adjusting that really quickly, and then I will grab the table and add some liquid glue to the back of that, and then I'm going to slide the top edge right under the bottom of that snow globe so that it looks like it's sitting right on top. Then I'll test the mechanism once again to make sure I didn't get any liquid glue in there, and then I can bring in the rest of my images and my sentiment. So I colored in the letters with the same red and green combos that I had used for everything else, and then trim that down with an everyday sentiment banner. And I'm going to adhere that first down at the bottom of the scene so I know how much space I have left to work with. And then I'm going to take the little dog that is looking up and add him to the left side of that table. So he's gazing up at the snow globe, and he is going to get the little reindeer hat. So I will add that right on top. And then I'm going to take the other little dog and make sure I have enough room for that light string to trail behind him. And then once I am confident with that placement, I can go ahead and glue him down. I'm going to have him kind of right above the sentiment, kind of drawing the eye to that. And then I'll just add that string of lights so it's overlapping his mouth a bit so it looks like he's got a hold of it. Then I have the dog bowl and the bone, so I just wanted to play with the arrangement and see where I wanted what. I thought the dog bowl made most sense up against the wall. That's where my dog's bowl is. And then I just put the bone down in the empty space at the lower left between the dog and the sentiment strip. And then, of course, I just wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to this card, so I'm going to take some Stardust Stickles and add that onto the string of lights, onto the bulbs, and then also to the bow on the bone and the little plaque on the snow globe. And then I also decided to add it to my sentiment, so I'm going to add it down at the bottom of each letter where the darkest shading was, just to add a tiny little bit of extra pop there. And that is going to finish up this card, so I'm going to lift that up so you can see how it catches the light and just get a closer look at all of the detail. I'll give you another peek at the inside, and then I will show you how that reveal wheel is working one last time. I know I've said in the past that interactive cards are not my favorite because I find them very intimidating, but this one was so simple and easy to put together. I'm so glad that I had a chance to play with it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it too. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted whenever I post a new video. There's going to be so much coming with the holidays. And all of the products I use will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below. And day 4 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series will be on screen. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.